do 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 do. It's Xoe and Xoe and me and me and Xoe, someone who makes games, and so am I, and that's what we're going to talk about today. Why the fuck do you make games, Xoe? I mean,
What?
okay, why the fuck do you make games?
Well, I make. I'm sorry. I'm having echo. Am I? Oh, okay. Sorry. I
Like,
had the stream open in our window and I was getting
so what we're
confused.
going to do today is we're going to go in three bits. Firstly, who are you? Secondly, what do you do, which is that you make games. And then lastly, why do you make games? But let's get straight into it with a little kind of preview. If you had to pin it down, what are some of the overriding emotions or payoffs that making games gives you?
Well, I find that making games really helps me explore my relationship with the world. I a lot of times I'll make a game because I'm experiencing something difficult, and so like designing the game, I want to respect all the different agencies and actors in the game, so that often means I have to sort of inhabit the role of the people that I'm really upset about. and and sometimes this is very humanizing and sometimes this is very alienating. Like, I don't understand why people might approach a scenario like this, but in other times it's like, okay, I'm starting to understand where they're coming from, and I'll feel kind of better afterwards. So sometimes I joke about making
Like,
games
it
as a way of
sounds like
therapy.
it's kind of a role-playing thing, like you're trying to get other people to inhabit new roles and try to have the opportunity to inhabit new roles for yourself. Is that right? Like, you're kind of using games as toolboxes to explore wider relationships, because those things within the games are kind of like a mirror of the real life. Is that a fair, reflection of what you're saying?
Yeah. I think a lot of games are role play to an extent.
Mm.
Very few games you are like most games is like you're adopting like a new temporary role. So you're like for this game, I am a cat that's like trying to cause damage, or I am a woodland critter trying to amass political power or something like that. But like, I guess we don't really think of those games as role playing because the game isn't asking you to perform that role. You're just kind of playing it through a very abstracted filter. But I
Yeah.
think that if you design the game in such a way that you have enough agency in it, then it feels less like you're abstractedly trying to put points on a scoreboard, and more like you're inhabiting a role, even if the game isn't explicitly telling you to perform, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. And hello to Rob. It is lovely to see you, and thank you for joining us. And everyone else who's here. Um, so let's take and it is also Nikita Sullivan. Lovely to have you. Let's take a way back. Who is Xoe? So you're a game designer, trans mum, you're a romantic, and you've talked a lot about that on social media. And actually, I
Yeah.
think you were the person who made me challenge my own emotions on that point and made me feel like, hey, maybe this it's an ongoing journey to kind of find out how your emotions and how your thought processing differs from the people around you. And I think, how would you say you differ from other people? And
Oh,
what have you been
I
up to today?
well, I feel like I differ quite a lot. It's complicated because when I was like first figuring this stuff out for myself, I was feeling so different that I was starting to feel like less human, which is part of
Mm,
why I started using the its pronouns. But sometimes as time goes on, I think that maybe I have more in common than I realize. It's just little things that are different. Like I don't ever develop crushes or experience romantic attraction towards anyone, and so I'm just sort of emulating it. And people and it people seem to not be able to tell the difference a lot of the time. So sometimes I wonder if everybody is emulating it, but apparently they're not. That's what I'm told. But that was kind of how I like perceived the world for a long time. So
Because it's like, how can you actually know what's going on in other people's heads unless you ask them? And I think this
yeah.
is really difficult because you also need to have trust that the other person is sincerely telling you what's going on in their head. Because I think when we talk about games, and it's so interesting that you talk about games as almost a toolbox to work out our relationship to other people, and I honestly hadn't considered that. And in your game Velociraptor, which, for full disclosure, I don't think I have played any of your games, although you have play tested at least one of mine, we think, for the L deck. And with Velociraptor, from what I understand, it is basically, please correct me if I misrepresent it, published by Hollandspiel, Amabel Holland, and but you're all dinosaurs and you're all facing extinction, and it's kind of like, hey, let's play these tiny micro games and let's distract ourselves from the world. And we kind of face the meaningless of life together. And what kind of games do you make? How would you present that game to other people?
So I've been sort of calling the games I make games where compassion and conflict coexist, and because a lot of my games are like trying to I feel like I'm trying to decenter like this like very egoist perspective, like trying to get people to think in like different perspectives and like stop seeing conflict as this thing where you have to dominate all the time, because there might be times when it's much better to sort of see eye to eye with somebody else and stuff like that. Velociraptor is a little unusual in that regard because that game was more of me coping with the impending end of the world. It was like my way of saying, like, I know climate change is coming and it's probably going to ruin everything, but it's not like the first time life was wiped out on the planet, like there'll be life again. There will be another, in like a few millennia, there will be another generation of like life forms playing games.
Side of the coin, isn't it? Because in one side we can look at stuff and say, oh my gosh, we're doomed, why bother do anything? On the other side we can say, hey, we're all doomed, but so nothing matters except for this moment. And it's that sort of memento mori where it's a liberation and also an excitement of the beauty of this moment because of its brevity. Would you agree with that? And are you a proponent of memento mori?
I'm not sure. I'm not super familiar with that phrase. I see it as sort of like a positive perspective on nihilism, because a lot of people look at nihilism as like oh, nothing matters, I'm going to just cause harm because it doesn't matter. But like this is more the flip side of like, if nothing matters, then I could be as nice as I want. I could just like I could just have as much fun as I want in this moment.
So it sounds like, would you say that you hope to promote compassion for other humans? And would you say that you hope that people pick up certain skills and practices through playing your games that then translate into real life?
Oh yeah, for sure. I talk about I've been realizing this a little bit more, but like I see games as like a sort of form of like exercise of different like skills, sort of like how you can play memory games to get better at memory. I think that a lot of games that are really zero-sum focused, like the ones that have like a single winner, they kind of encourage like a very combative, domination focused way approach to life. And so I've been trying to create these games where you're not forced to be cooperative, you're not forced to be combative, but you have the option to choose. And trying to put people in situations where collaboration is like the optimal strategy, because I feel like we don't see enough of that in our games, and I want people to exercise their compassion muscles.
It does sound like you are trying to fill up a gap. I mean, okay, we've talked about the types of games that you make, but then why do you make them? And you've kind of answered that question. If those games already existed, if there were already games, would you want to still, if there were as many games about love and compassion and working together and hey, everyone's working on their own thing and we don't even compare victory goals with each other, would you still be making games, or would you feel like, hey, there's actually enough of that, maybe I'll kind of leave it? Do you get what I'm asking?
Yeah, I do. And I do think, I don't know if I would be making games if there was more games like these, because a lot of what drives me to make games is that I'm not seeing these type of games in the world. So like if there was already a Persuasion, then I would just go play that. If there was already like a if these games already existed, I would simply buy them and play them with my friends. I don't know that I would make these games. I would make games if like all the things I wanted existed already. In fact, I joked about this.
Like you're talking about buying them and playing them with your friends, and for you, let's take a step aside from game design, talk about game playing. And would you say that when you play games, is it the same kinds of games that you make? And do your tastes, is your game design an expression of your tastes? Because it doesn't seem to be an expression of what you think will be marketable or make you money. It seems to be much more an expression of what you find interesting.
Yeah, the kind of games I play with my friends, I personally think that if there were more games like this, I would play them. But as it stands, I play a lot of like competitive games with my friends. I find myself playing a lot, well, like very political, very social games, sort of like Turncoats and Root and Oath. Those are like some of my favorites. But I also play a lot of party games because those are also highly social. So that's the kind of space that I inhabit when I choose games to play with my friends. They usually choose games I would rather not play at all. But I'm there to play with my friends.
I mean, for sure, when you play things with other people, I mean, I don't know if you saw my thing on Facebook that I posted earlier today. I think you were probably asleep while I posted this, because just for the record, this is currently 9:15 my time. And what time is it where yours, Zoe?
It's 7:15 in the morning. I actually thought this was going to be an hour earlier.
Okay, so you gave yourself an hour less sleep. But yeah, I guess that's still kind of early, and I do appreciate you getting up, at an earlier time than you might otherwise. But I'm just thinking about this desire to have something to share this game with your friends, because we all have an idea of whether that's playing this game or walking that way down the road, or walking that way down the road and buying an expensive meal, or walking the third way and doing some other totally different activity. I mean, games are obviously just a subset of life, but in any leisure activity, I think the two key things for me are that the people I'm playing with or spending time with are they're cool people. But then the second thing, which people sometimes overlook, is that we have at least enough of an overlap of what we actually want to do. And there does need to be some communication, some conversation, some flexibility. So when you make your games, when you design your games, do you make them with your play group in mind? Do you try to make them so that there will be a little bit more palatable so that the people at your group will actually want to play your games and play test and help you along with them? What kind of target audience do you have in mind?
Yeah, I do think about like my friends and the sorts of people who don't play these type of games when I design them, because like sometimes I will design something that's like very abrasive, very like unfriendly, and like I'll bring it to a playtest and they'll be like, I hated this. This was miserable. This seemed completely unfair and I didn't like it. I was like, oh good, that's how you're supposed to feel. And then like I realized later, like, yeah, but like then my friends and other people are just gonna discount it as like a poor design rather than an intentional like experience that they were having. So I do have to sort of design so like where it's like clear that like some abrasiveness is intentional, but it's not so abrasive that people don't engage with it at all.
Yeah, it's hard to make things where there's like, I mean, for example, earlier on, the landlord's game, of course, like the fact that you're in this perpetuation of inequality is the message of the game. That, if you start with more land, you're going to get richer. But then as a game, that is quite horrible. And then the things that Monopoly did make it a little bit more pleasurable to play, but it also perverted the whole initial idea. And the question is, like, as a message, as a lesson to impart, how do you then balance that with saying, okay, well, people come to games with an expectation of entertainment, because that is our current reality. And I think that in the LARP tabletop space, it's a little bit different. People might buy something and then say, okay, this is a great game. This is a game about how miserable you are in a mental institution, and you're kind of playing this, and then if you're one of the prisoners, you'll learn about how mistreatment happens and you'll learn about the politics, and that's a really good game. And I wish I could remember the name of the game, but that was playable at the Smoke, and it's a thing that I played. But I think how it's within the tabletop, packaged in a box, board game kind of community, there is a strong distaste for games that are reaching beyond the scope of just pleasure bundles. How do you connect those two parts, and how do you make that square that circle of having to appeal to people while still wanting to get across your message?
I very carefully. I don't know that I've sort of figured out the art to it exactly. My games are still occupying like a particular niche, so it's not like I've gone gangbusters at like figured out how to appeal to mass market, but so like that's always going to be contention for me. But I think so. So I guess my answer is to just like keep pushing my message like firmly and progressively louder, and that's why I like started the lunar punk thing, because I'm like, if publishers aren't going to pick up my game, I'm going to publish these kinds of games myself. And so because I think there is a market for these games. I think the industry is just kind of young, and because it's not like we don't have like dramas in other like forms of media. It's not like we don't have movies that are about deep depressing things or like whatnot. So I think it's just a matter of like time and persistence that we kind of break out of this like kind of childish bubble.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, some of the movies that in one Discord that we're both parts of, it's like, wow, that's really challenging, and there's not much of an effort made to make this more palatable, but that almost makes the message all the stronger. It's raw emotion, it's raw grief, it's raw danger. And I mean, even something that's a really big budget like Blade Runner, which does have a lots of parts where, okay, wow, they are really bringing in the drama here. It's not just an action film. There's a lot of cerebration, I think. Let's go through some of the stuff that I proposed down below. And for everyone in the audience, feel free to say, why is it that you make games? And I'm going to ask you to kind of rate these factors. Like, do you feel it's like primary, secondary, tertiary, or just like not really a priority for you? So do you feel that validation is part of it? Like wanting to see your name on a box, wanting to be the person who makes these things happen? I know that a lot of people talk about, hey, I want to just have my box on the shop shelf. And honestly, I find validation so much in other people saying, hey, I played this and I enjoyed it. And when someone just says that of their own free will, and it's like, oh, wow, they probably really actually enjoyed it. That means I brought some joy to this person. And that's like the most amazing thing. Honestly, if I had to pick one of these things, it is for me a lot about my ego. How about you?
Yeah. I'd be lying if I said there was no part of me that needed validation of my games. There's definitely a part of me that needs it. Like, and there's definitely a part of me that like, oh, that feels good when like somebody's like tells me like, oh, you're the designer of the best game ever. I'm like, oh, thank you. Like, I try not to design from that space because like I feel like if I wanted validation, I could probably design some like really popular like competitive games that are not aligned with like the worldview that I want to push. But
But then that's being untrue to yourself, because it's also about the validation of being accepted for you. Because I mean, both of us, at the risk of, outing your whatever. Well, you've already called yourself a trans mum, but I mean, both of us are gender queer, and both of us are people who have chosen to live, who have done some introspection, looked within ourselves, decided that who we are doesn't quite fit with who we used to be, and then made some changes and are living a more authentic version of ourselves. And I do wonder whether there is a desire to be validated for your genuine self, because you could be a phony, you could go into a club and do all the things that a book says or hit all the points in a conversation, but that's not really being cool and making a genuine connection. I mean, if you have a conversation and you're just going through the top 10 questions to ask on a date, that feels like a kind of weak sauce connection. Like, it feels quite artificial. But then if you actually manage to connect with the other person, listening to what they're saying and going back and forth. And so is that validation, would you agree that genderqueer people who have changed their identity part, maybe there's an extra need to be validated for your authentic self? And I don't know.
Yeah. I think everybody kind of struggles with this like need for validation. It's just that it's like very obvious with queer people, because like a lot of people do get kind of like validation to some extent, like and they might still go for like gender affirming surgeries even though they're like cis and stuff, just because they want like to continue that validation. But I think what's different for genderqueer people is that they are by default not usually receiving that validation. Like, I think that's the only real difference, because I think even cis people want validation. They just don't have to ask for it, right? Like,
yeah, you're right. I mean, like, I go to Malaysia and then I tell someone calls me sir, I say not to sir, and then 7 minutes later they call me sir again. And is damaging to the ego to have a core part of your identity. And then I've had one cis guy say, "Oh, but if someone calls me a woman, I'm not going to get upset. I'm just going to think, oh, that's a silly person." And I tried to explain to them, and I kind of regret my energy because it was a waste. But here in a public forum, I think there's definitely a sense that cis people are, as you say, being validated for who they are on a daily basis. And it's like if someone says hello, sir, or hello, ma'am, I think we could get away from those gendered honorifics, and that would be nice. But the, yeah, if you imagine flipping it the other side, like a cis person, if 95% of the time they're being gendered correctly, 5% of the time it's flipped, okay, it's easy to laugh off, but 1,000 straws breaks a camel's back. And that's my viewpoint with misgendering. Talking about validation, Rob says that there's a general compulsion to design games, but it's also about being part of the community, being considered a peer, says Rob, or nearly by game designers I admire feels amazing. So it's a sense of validation, not from having the physical proof of your creation, not from having people play your games or compliment your games, but from other people consider you also a peer. Would you say that that for you is a draw in making games as well?
Oh yeah. This sort of like I definitely feel like as being a part of a community is like a draw for this. I think we're very like social creatures, so like I think this is kind of like how a lot of people get into hobbies. They like get really deep into like stamp collecting because they've been established as like the collector of these specific like 1920s stamps or whatever. Like I think it's like a very common like community aspect of like
this is your role
developing
now,
our identity.
You build your connection. So would you say, yeah, I mean, it sounds like creation, it is a release. It is a desire to make something and to have this message. And I think that certain something and being true to yourself. I mean, I know Eric Lang with I Heart inserts animal name. And I think there's something very nice in saying, I just really love manatees and I want other people to love manatees as well. So here's a game about manatees, and it's also going to go some money for conservation, which is also its own cool thing. And then you feel good because you're helping other people, you're spreading knowledge. And yeah, it does. The next couple of things that I'd written, a desire to make a certain something, a message, that seems core to your desire. Would I be correct?
Yeah. A big part of it, it didn't start this way, but it feels like as I do like more studying and research, I'm feeling like retroactively like affirmed that like this is like my own personal form of activism. Because like I've been reading a lot, like obsessing over C.T. Nguyen and like the guy who wrote the Games Agency as art book, and how when they play.
Yes.
Yeah, I've been becoming.
Yeah, I've not read the book, but I've listened to like all the podcasts he's on. Like I think I found about 10 podcasts, and I've got an idea of what the book's about. But for those who don't know, it is basically so have you read the book, I assume?
Yeah, I've read it, and it's kind of this like idea that when we play games, like the artistic expression of it is sort of like how our agency is like shaped as we engage with the activity. I feel like I'm going to do a disservice, but like, and also how our values kind of get captured by these games when our motivations are streamlined into like a point system. So it's to me, it's like a cautionary thing of like, don't let yourself get lost into like these games of make number go up, and to practice more mindful exercises of like games where you have to be conscious of like the agential role that you're engaging in when you play a game, and develop a sort of agential fluidity, I think is what he calls it,
Mm-mm.
where you kind of get better at looking at your values and going like, was that valuable to me? Sort of in the same way that we might play a board game and then afterwards be like, did I really think that was fun? Was that worth my time? Would I play it again? Being able to
Yeah, to
like
kind of
practice
point at,
doing it.
and I think CT when like has opinions on social media and gamification and how
Oh
it
yeah,
is very
yeah.
dangerous at chasing all these metrics is very dangerous. And I think it's true in life as well. I mean, when we create games, we do get to find out, oh, how many copies did it sell? How much money did it make? And if it's on Board Game Geek, what rating did people give it? How many
Mm-hmm,
comments did
mm-hmm.
it get? Oh, how many other people reviewed it on their YouTube channels or Instagram or whatever? How
Right, right.
many messages did I get about it? And even the most innocent thing, like the most innocent joy of, hey, I'm running an event, and how many people came to this one event? It's really, really easy and dangerous to go chasing these metrics, I think. And
Yeah,
I've actually started drawing things that are not safe for work, because that way I don't feel like I'm going to share them on my main social medias, because it's like, yeah, I'm not going to show that. That's like just a thing where I'm still enjoying the mark making. And maybe there are certain places where I'll show it off, but I then have to find some internal enjoyment from it and focus on that rather than the external validation. So, I mean,
mm-hmm.
when you look at the metrics, the money, the sales, I mean, as far as I understand, you've got one published game, and I'm assuming the um, sales from that are quite low, but maybe bought you a few nice dinners. I don't know.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
a couple of dinners, but like, I mean, how how do you avoid chasing those metrics, if you know what I mean? And a quick
Uh,
hello to Matt. I hope you're generally well from the offline gamer.
um, I avoid chasing metrics very carefully. It's a challenge because like there is
Our
like
lizard brains
these,
want the numbers, right?
yeah, like these systems tap into our brain. Like a post I put up gets like a bunch of likes and get a bunch of followers. It's like easy to look at that and be like, yes, yes. Like, but like
Come to
I try to,
me.
yeah, but I try to resist it because like chasing numbers like have had like has had a very detrimental impact on my life. Like for a long while I was getting into like some eating disorder type territory because I was like trying to like lower the metric that is my weight, which is like another like metric that people chase. It's like I try to be very conscious of it, and I try to be like, it doesn't matter. Like that, the number of likes on this does not correlate to any real like marker of my
Value?
value. It's
Yeah.
I try to be conscious of what it means. Like what do those likes mean, and like try to be conscious of like chasing that. Like do I really want a bunch of likes, or do I want to share stuff that I think is valuable to people? Do I really want to lose weight, or do I just want to be in good shape? And like
Mm.
and what like try to figure out what metrics actually mean something to me and which ones are just really easy, like really have
Distractions?
a clear like path to my dopamine buttons.
Yeah, I mean, I find it. I totally get what you're saying about weight, and it's such an easy number to fixate on. And I put on like over 10 kilos in the past 14 months. Part of that is going through second puberty. Part of that is, allowing myself maybe to eat a bit more. I just moved here, and yeah, sometimes when I go to Unicat Market, I might buy more cake type stuff than is always appropriate. And so I'm going to start being mindful, but still allow myself, chicken and basic rice. And like, I'm not going to be super mindful of, oh my gosh, how much rice am I eating? But certainly I am starting to tell people, hey, no sugar in that, please, when they're making the food for me specifically. And I think that's an easy way to shirk that, is to shift the metric from what's my weight to how long can I walk? How long can I run around this thing for? How long can I cycle up to the third floor of the parking lot where the bike bits are without getting out of breath? And that's the kind of thing that, as you say, talking about being in shape, that's what it is ultimately, being able to use your body for what you want.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I've been like trying to exercise more because what I want is to be able to keep up with my kid, not to fit into smaller clothes. Like like that's the thing that's valuable to me. So I was going to a dietitian to address like health issues, and like I think a lot of her work has just been trying to break bad habits like of like trying, like I haven't looked at my weight in like several months, and I know I've gained weight, but I'm trying to like just focus on the how active am I able to be aspect, because at my skinniest I was not able to do very much at all because I was very fatigued. And so it's much so focusing on how much I am able to do, like how many miles am I able to run, that sort of thing.
And it is interesting, like, isn't it, that surface level visual of, okay, are you a fit person? Because there is some fat phobia in society. And for sure, if we see someone who's slightly more malnourished, we, as a society, I think currently will be like, oh, that looks like a healthy person. And that's really not great.
So frustrating.
And I think that there is a similar analog towards games, to try and bring it back on track a wee bit. Just like with games, I mean, there are definitely things that people might look at and say, oh, that makes a good game and that makes a bad game. And but some of those metrics might be misleading. Like you're talking about a game being abrasive, but it's actually deliberate. And this is like, okay, this is confusing at the start, but then eventually it becomes such a lovely thing. And a quick hello to Xoe, and it is me, and also Xoe, and I hope you are just, and I have a guess of the next name, exactly. So, talking about motivations, was there anything you wanted to say at this point? Let's in terms of what we were just talking about, in terms of surface level attractions to games that maybe you've deliberately chosen to avoid because they would make your games less about the game you want to make. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. I don't know that I've ever had that conflict. I do try to be more mindful of like how much metrics I put into my games. Recently I've been trying to make like my own attempt at a cozy Euro game because I don't like any of the cozy Euro games that are out there. This is me trying to put games that I like into the world again. And like trying to make it sort of have the same shape as a Euro. I was like thinking like, do I want to put like metrics into this? Do I want to like have like things that generate points? And I'm like, but I hate that. Like, so
maybe we'll have something totally different. Maybe we're moving away from the idea of points, but then it's like, how do you attract people? Because points are such an easy way to deliver dopamine, as you say. And it's like, hey, I'm getting some points. You got 20 points, but hey, I got 15 points and I still feel good about myself because I got points. And I don't know.
Yeah. I have ideas of how I'm going to hit that like sort of sense of progression, because I think that is like a thing that's going to have to be in there. But I have ideas on how I'm going to do that without metrics. Just instead having, I would just have to have a lot of like random knickknacks in it.
I just want to say that not everything that I display is necessarily meant to be something that I agree with. It, I mean, I like this from a humor point of view, and I'm displaying it as a joke. But I do think there is something problematic when you start chasing Elo for any game, and then I think that at a certain point, playing the game can be. Yes, I am insinuating that. I am Electric Lights Orchestra, says Rob. Um, but in all seriousness, I think that once you start playing games within a tournament, or once you start playing them to increase your overall Elo score, I think that is problematic. I don't know how else to put it. It takes away from the playfulness of each internal game. It gives it a seriousness that moves it away from being this perfect magic circle that doesn't matter, and it closes. And it's like what happens within the game stays within the game. And I think there's something perfectly playful about forgetting. Do you know what I mean? It's like, okay, whatever happened there doesn't matter. But yeah. But yeah, okay, we seem to have gotten off topic due to Xate. So let's go through a few quick things. Have you ever made a game for a dearest friend or with a single person in mind?
Yeah. I made my kid was having like a take your parent to like a career day at school, and I mentioned this recently on the Building the Game podcast, but I made a game for her classroom, just for that like 10-minute like period of career day. So it was this was like the first iteration of Vibes, where each kid was given a card with a shape and a color, and they had to find somebody else with a matching shape or color, and the kids had a great time with it. And I suspect a good deal of it was just because the cards had cute animals on them and brightly colored shapes. But yeah, it was very cute. Yeah, it was like a very unique scenario that game was designed for. So it had to change quite a bit when I made it into the Vibes that exist today. But yeah, that was the game that I made specifically for my child.
And if people want to find out more about that, they can check it out on your thing, which I'll post as a wee comment. Oh wait, that's the Google Drive. And
Yeah.
do you think that?
I'm sorry.
Sorry. What were you saying?
Oh, I was saying that if you wanted to know more about that game or follow that, I would check out lunarpunk.games, because that's going to be
not
who I'm publishing
knifebunny.com.
through. Yeah, it's on knifebunny.com, but it's going to be published through Lunarpunk.
Okay, so definitely check out Knife Bunny. And Xate is trolling me and trying to get me to be on tangents, apparently. So money, is that a thing for you in any way?
Yeah, money is indeed a thing for me.
It is a thing in this world. I mean, I think the majority of people, there's a lot of people who kind of need a wee bit more to be truly comfortable, and then a wee number of people who have like ridiculous amounts.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I happen to be in a pretty blessed spot where I don't have a particular need for a lot of it, because I have a lot of support from my family and whatnot, and I don't have incredibly expensive vices. So don't worry too much about it relative to most people. So I'm very lucky in that respect. So I think perhaps if I was in the position that I needed more money, perhaps I would not have the luxury to make such weird, eccentric stuff. I would be forced to make stuff that I knew appealed to people because I needed the money.
Or potentially spend your time doing something else that doesn't involve as much self-expression.
Yeah, more realistically, I would be doing software instead. If I really needed the money, I would be programming for some big corporation.
I am probably, it's a weird thing, like I'm in a similar-ish position where I moved to Bangkok deliberately because it's cheaper here, it is more affordable, and I can't afford to go out to, you know, a fancy place all the time, but I can do that occasionally. And, you know, street food, it costs like 60 baht, so that's very affordable. And there is something delightful about walking around and be like, oh wow, suddenly I'm not just thinking about the cost of food, I'm also thinking about what is good for me to eat. I'm able to make choices based on other factors, not just the financial. And the amount that money is going to be a factor to you is going to depend so much on your life situation, like how much your life costs. Like if I hadn't moved here, I think I would be a lot more desperate to make more money. I mean, as it is, I could kind of cope, like, and more money would be nice, but it's, I mean, my current room, I don't have air conditioning, which is why it's pretty gosh darn hot here. But it's fine. It's like still there's joys in life, and I'm able to engage in that. I'm still able to engage into connections. And at a certain point, it's like, okay, money does have diminishing values. And at the start, for sure, it's, you know, gets you your shelter, your basics, your food. And then at a certain point, it's like, okay, you can start thinking about what kind of food. And then, like, maybe a little bit above, it's like, okay, now we can start thinking about having these luxuries and that luxuries. And at a certain point, it's like, okay, yeah, I could buy an island, and it's just so unreal that it doesn't make any sense. But do you think that the desire for money depends more upon your situation than your personality?
Yeah, I would say so. I feel like it's determined a great deal by your circumstances. And like, I think it's easy to like look at somebody who spends a lot of money on like expensive like shoes or something and then be like, oh, they're spending irresponsibly and that's why they're in hard money problems. But it's like, I don't know, like, why are the shoes so expensive? Like this, I'm not sure if I'm explaining this in a coherent way, but like we are like in some part like a construct of our circumstances, and like the way things are priced and the way monetary rewards are awarded are also arbitrary. So it's like, why is my job of like putting numbers into a computer worth so much more than the person who's keeping like the building clean and functioning? Like janitor's work is like way more noble than mine in some respects, but they're paid a lot less. Like that doesn't seem quite fair. My vice of like video games is relatively cheap compared to like going for expensive fancy like fashion designer stuff, but like why is that stuff so much more expensive? I guess in that respect there's like a material component to it, but like but my point stands, like there's an arbitrarity to it, so it doesn't seem, there's nothing about this like particularly fair to me.
Yeah, 100%. And I guess, you know, money is definitely a motivation, but I like what you say, that we are a product of our circumstances. And it doesn't mean that we as people are more material or other people are less so, just that we're kind of forced to be to some extent. And I think, yeah, I don't know. Let's finish it up with the one thing that I wrote, which Rob mentioned earlier at the start, the word compulsion. Because I think once you've started something, there is a desire to continue. And before you start, there might be, oh my gosh, I have to do this. I want to add to this art form. I want to make stuff, and I just have to do it somehow. And I think for me, it does become a habituation when I have a regular playtest group that's on Fridays, and then going to that playtest group is not just a sense of validation because I'm bringing my own games, but it's also a social connection. It's also a habit, a healthy habit, admittedly, but then maybe it's unexplored. So then the question becomes, do you think a lot of people are just making games just because and without exploring the reasons? And do you think that that's an unhealthy thing to leave your motivations unexplored?
Um, I, I, well, I think in general, self-reflection is like a good, valuable thing to understand your motivations and whatnot. But I also think that I think we're all compulsed to make games. Like even people who are not like so-called like game designers, because like play is like a very natural like animal like instinct, because play kind of prepares you for the complexities of life. And so
Mm,
like making games is like another way of us being like, okay, well, I would like to imagine a game where like kids do this all the time, where they're like, oh, let's make a game where I'm like the store manager and you're like buying something from me. And it's sort of like a way of rehearsing for other parts of life that you suspect you will need to be ready for.
it's a
I just
model,
think,
it's a gross simplification, but then it's maybe just by going through those motions, it familiarizes you, it builds those muscles. Yeah, absolutely, I
mhm,
get. And
yeah,
you're
yeah,
suggesting that um, when making games, people fall down those same things of, hey, let's build muscles, and it becomes a case of almost a compulsion. Am I right in understanding you're saying that it's the iteration, the making games and then testing them out, that becomes the compulsion rather than um, sequentially making games? I don't, sorry,
I
what sort
yeah,
exactly
no,
is? Do you have a summary or
yeah,
a?
I think we're just compulsed to play and make games in general. Like
Hmm.
if I like as a
And if we keep in
primal like
touch with
instinct.
ourselves, like maybe at play in other ways, like to sing random melodies occasionally and to dance and to make movements that don't really matter and to express yourself through motion that's extraneous and excessive.
Yeah, like there's like a compulsion to express yourself in general and to engage with the world, and to some extent that is play. And so creating new ways to play is like a form of like game design, which is a compulsion, because we're compulsed to live, we're compulsed to like participate in society and interact with each other and play. So um I feel like
That's
we're compulsed to do it
useful.
as much as we're compulsed to like eat and like breathe, you know.
So you see game design very much itself as a playful activity, and therefore it becomes human nature.
Yeah, I think so. I didn't teach my kid to design games, but she's designing games on her own. Like it seems like a very human part of us. It's just some of us dive into it a lot deeper.
Well, Zoe, this has been honestly just a lovely conversation. Thank you for being my guinea pig for the first in a very short series. And next Monday at a similar time, I am going to be back with Chantal talking about does Chantal demo games and what's that all about. Then we'll hopefully be talking to someone about making clothes, and then someone else, and Nikita, for making games in 3 weeks' time. So yeah, it'll be going every Monday for 4 weeks. Before we break up, Xoe, where should people go to follow you, and what would you like people at this point to know, or is there anything else you would like to say or ask?
I just keep hanging in there. World is kind of crazy right now, so just keep hanging in there, survive. You could do it. If you want to follow me and my stuff, knifebunny.com is good. I'm going to be publishing stuff under lunarpunk.games soon, so if you're interested in like these sort of eccentric games that I'm talking about, then that would be a place to look. Yeah, that's pretty much all I got.
I do actually really like your websites with these cards and stuff for the record. Wait, Lunar Punk Games.
Oh, lunarpunk.games. Sorry.
Okay. Not sending people to this
domain
spot or person.
Lunarpunk.games.
The night is for everyone. Oh, I like that. We endeavour to create beautiful, memorable tabletop games with focus on rules and outcomes that match the complexity and curiosity of real life. Our mission is for every player at the table to have something personal, engaging, or exciting they aim to achieve through play. I do love that, and it kind of reminds me of so much, and I would love to chat to you again at some point. Not necessarily on a stream, just about murder mysteries and LARPs and how personal objectives, which might not even be visible to the other players, do provide that sense of direction, and how goals are ultimately only that, a sense of direction, if only for a moment. And then in real life, obviously, you can choose to discard this sense of direction and choose to go down a new path. Maybe, I don't know, maybe I'm seriously considering doing a few years of training and moving into something totally different, to be honest, like therapy or counseling, or I don't know. But we can change, and maybe it would be nice for the directions in a game to change to reflect that, because we don't want, you talked about games being simplifications, and for sure we want that comfort, we want that safety, but games can be more expressive than they currently are. I absolutely love your call to action with the video that you made. I should put up a link to that if you have a link, but I can share a link in the comments, and definitely everyone just, it was a call to action that you wrote that was saying, hey everyone, let's not just continue making games like we're all already doing. Let's explore what could be possible. And I think that there is something beautiful about that. And I applaud you and appreciate you, Xoe, for continuing to work to expand the realms of what games are. Did you manage to find a link? Because if you did, type it in the private chat and I can copy paste it.
Yeah, let me get it for you. It's the you're talking about my video, the Emperor's High Score. Is that the one?
Yes. So this is an excellent video. So after this one, I'm going to sing goodbye, and then feel free to check out the Emperor's High Score, which should be a comment on YouTube or Twitch. Xoe, do you have any final words?
No, just hope you have a lovely day. In your case, a lovely night.
Yeah, it's just coming up to 10 o'clock. I'm going to wind down. But to everyone out there, have a lovely whatever it is for you, whenever you watch this, because of course some people will be watching not live. And bye, 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 bye. This is a goodbye song. Bye, 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 bye. Thank you for watching along. Bye, 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 bye. This is the end of the show. Bye, 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 bye. And now it's time to go. Bye 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 bye. This is goodbye song. Bye 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 bye. Thank you for watching. Bye 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 bye. This is the end of the show. Bye 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 bye. And now it's time to go. Bye bye.